Do you think a person is owed a home where they grew up? I grew up in Maine and people are always complaining how out-of-staters are moving here and locals can't afford homes. I have always had a hard time wrapping my head around this because we live in the US and people are free to move wherever they want. Is somebody really more deserving of a home just because they were born in that area? Does this make sense? Sorry if this is a weird question. They are not owed it, but I do sympathize with them. It hurts deeply to be priced out of the neighborhood you call home. Not a weird question at all. It's a raging debate in many parts of California. No, I moved out of my small town after I went away to college. Many of my high school friends and one sister did not. And yes, many of them rely on their parents for babysitting, a place to live, help with financing a home, etc. It's not a stupid question, but I do think it's a shame when natives are priced out of the market. This is their home, and unless their hometown sucks, they are probably attached to it. The younger generations in the SF Bay Area are facing this problem, as it's very hard to afford a home without working in high tech or getting substantial parental assistance. Nope. I grew up in multiple different states. Does that mean I don't deserve a home? Because I don't really have any ties or roots anywhere. States are not their own countries. Most of us are descended from immigrants and have zero right to tell anyone where they have to live or not live. My ancestors were refugees who were stripped of their citizenships as well. Where the hell am I supposed to go? You are owed nothing. All the more ironic when their great-grandfathers kicked the native population off of the land. So did their families live there since the beginning of time? At one point, someone in their family was one of the dreaded out-of-staters for them to even be there. Everyone everywhere are making the same claim. It's because all prices are shooting up faster than you can save for a down payment. Where I live, over 95 cannot afford to buy a home of any type. And with rents going through the roof, how could anyone save? I don't even understand how people can afford food nowadays, much less an entire house. No one is owed a home in a particular area. Maybe they are frustrated because they cannot afford to move to a different area than they were born and cannot afford a home. Lots of people all over struggle to afford homes in their area though. Maybe not to buy, but if people can't afford to stay in the neighborhood they live in, that's actual displacement, and I would say a policy failure. Doesn't mean if you grew up in 5-bed single family you should be able to buy one on your block when you turn 30. But everyone should be able to find affordable housing within a few minutes of where they grew up. Whether that's a rental or townhome or whatever. There have to be a variety of options. Nobody is owed anything by life or the universe at large. The entire concept is nonsensical. No one is owed anything. My parents live in Tennessee. When they die, am I owed my childhood home? No. It's theirs to do with as they please. Much less you couldn't pay me enough money to move back there. It's perfectly logical to resent people who come from outside, buy up homes and drive up prices, making it difficult for people who work in the local economy to do the same. You don't have to feel like you're owed something. More like they never had a chance. There is always a boogeyman. And it is always easier to blame outsiders. There is no inherent right to something. If you don't like it, make enough money or vote for zoning changes or whatever to try to encourage what you want. Why should people want to live on the same land as their families and forefathers? Maybe take a look at nearly all human cultures across the world and across time. Even nomadic peoples tend to have a deep sense of belongingness to land. While exceptions apply in individual cases, we can probably safely consider this one of a few chronic human desires. Your perspective is both valid and rather novel. No, there is population growth. So what was outer suburbs for grandma might now be inner suburbs. Your starter home will probably be a middle-ring suburb in another couple generations. Gentrification is one thing, so is losing good homes to flippers and rental agencies. There's plenty of legitimate reasons to be super upset with the housing market. But owed? No. We got priced out of our home market, so we moved. It gave us an opportunity to thrive, and thrive we did. Let go or be dragged. The entire notion of gentrification is the same premise, and predominantly applies to renters, who don't really have a claim over the land or property at all. It comes down to people simply not liking change in their communities. NIMBYISM. I think everybody feels like that. Until it is your time to buy a house in your purchasing power zone, which ends up being somewhere else that's not your birthplace. I'm feeling that right now. My new neighbors are not being very welcoming and are very suspicious of me because I'm an outsider in the tiny village and they've never seen me. To help it, I'm very introvert and closed. It's a ripple effect. My parents bought their house near the Jersey Shore in 1994 for around $90K. Adjusted for inflation, that is $181K. The house is now valued at $560K. So I can't buy a house where I grew up. So I had to move to a more rural area of NJ where I could afford. And now I'm being called a gentrifier by the locals. LMAO. Id gaff though. I wanted a house and I got one. That's what the market is about. And things aren't changing in my lifetime. I mean, no one is owed anything. But it sucks to be priced out of a community you grew up in by rich New Yorkers who get to work remotely now. But also Maine should build a wall to keep them out. In the real world? Of course not. That doesn't mean it isn't sad if you've lived in an area your whole life and you're priced out and will never be able to afford living there unless your parents die and leave you their house. Like if you live in the Bay Area and you're forced to move to Fresno. Phrasing it as someone being owed a home is inaccurate. It's not that they are owed a home, but do they deserve the right to continue living where they, their family, and their ancestors put down roots? That's a more apt question in relation to what you described. Chose not to buy a house in the town I grew up. In a perfect world, cost wouldn't be a barrier for a productive member of society to buy a modest home in the community they grew up in. In reality, you are owed nothing in this world. And you are especially not owed something that required significant capital and labor of other people to create. The biggest problem, in my opinion, is that wages haven't kept up with the cost of living. When you have someone in the 80th income percentile that can't afford a home, something is deeply wrong with the system. I get it. I felt the same way during the early 2000s ramp up. I had gotten out of the service, graduated from school, got a job, had a little bit of cash flow and wanted to buy where I grew up. It was that feeling when the band you like becomes real popular. Hey, I liked them before everyone else did. It was like I wanted to live there before it ever became popular to live there. I went through all the growing pains as a kid growing up there. Why can't I live there now? Well, 'cause people with more money want to live there more. Just wasn't gonna happen for me. But them's the breaks. Not specifically. But there's a big problem if huge categories of people are locked out of any sort of home ownership across a large area. And we are seeing some of that in some parts of the US and Canada. As a New Yorker who moved to Maine, I would like to apologize. If you're at all interested in promoting social cohesion and maintaining citizens who give a shit about where they live, yes,